Hey, everybody. It's Colton Stombaugh again with the Inspire podcast. We're providing you fearless technical product sales and marketing insights. Today, I'm here with two incredible guests, Dave Lacaille and Ed Kammerer, from two really great companies, kind of sharing the same parent company, Dover. We'll let them cover that. But we're talking about a really great topic today that I think is at the front of every B2B marketer's mind. And that's a return to in-person trade shows and events. No, it's a huge thing in this space, and we've got two foremost experts who have been there, done that, know the ins and outs, can tell you how it was before, how it is now, and what's exciting moving forward. So with that said, how you doing today, Dave?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Colton. How are you?
Oh, can't complain. Not that anybody be listening, but you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Who do you represent? What do you do? And for reasons we'll talk about in a minute, do you put ketchup on your hot dogs?
Okay. First of all, no, I don't eat hot dogs, but I do put ketchup on my hamburgers.
Okay.
In all seriousness, my name is Dave Lacaille. I work for OPW Fueling Solutions. Been with the company for about 31 years. I've held a variety of different roles through the company over the years. The last 15 have been in the commercial side of the business. So today I'm in charge of title-wise Senior Director of North American Sales for the company. So I manage Mexico, Canada, and US sales teams. I've been fortunate enough to go to trade shows for probably the last 26 years. Once I got in our engineering side of our business, I used to spend a lot of time from a product perspective talking to customers at all the trade shows. So I've attended NACS since 1996. And it was nice to get back this year.
Well, Ed, how about you? I think, that's going to be a tough act to follow, but, who are you? I think a lot of our audience might know already from our virtual trade show, if you remember. That first episode when we were talking about how events went fully virtual for a little bit there. Now you're here talking about the recovery.
Yeah, well, Colton, great. Thanks for inviting me back. I'm surprised that, you wanted to have me again after our first podcast. But as always, I appreciate the invitation. So those of you that didn't see the very first podcast, my name's Ed Kammerer. I'm actually the Director of Marketing and Global Product Strategy for OPW Retail Fueling. I've been at OPW for 24 years. And prior to that, I worked for a large distributor, petroleum contractor. So I've been in this industry for, like Dave, 30 years, and have probably been attending trade shows almost that entire time. So very familiar with the trade show market, both as a sales guy and now more of a product guy, slash marketing. Marketing's in my title, but actually I oversee all of our product development and engineering as well. So I got a really good perspective on products and at least what we think our customers want or what they want to see. And, obviously trade shows are a great platform to do that. As far as hot dogs, brown mustard on a hot dog is the only way to go. The only way I would put ketchup on is if I had yellow mustard, then I may add some ketchup, but brown mustard on a hot dog for me, man.
I expected you to tell me you don't mess with it because you just put good chili on the top of it, but that's all right. Cincinnati.
Nah, that's okay. I'm not really a cheese coney guy. I'm more of a ballpark hot dog with brown mustard.
Well, the reason I put you both on the spot to ask the ketchup question is because obviously I think we had a Super Bowl-like event for the two of you here in Chicago, my hometown. Love it. Best city in the world. With PEI-NACS last month, right? And I think, we've been seeing over the past few months trade shows starting to come back, but this is the real deal, right? At least I think it is. Dave, you mind talking a little bit about PEI-NACS and its importance to the fueling industry to give our viewers some context on the scale of this event?
Sure. PEI-NACS is the creme de la creme of retail fuel industry trade shows and has been for years. That's where all the big players come, and even some of the small players come. It's where they all gather versus like when you get to local state shows, you get single site owner type people and folks like that. When you get to NACS, you get the people that run the 7-Elevens, the Circle K, the the huge customers. So it's always a very, very good event for us. We get really enjoy it. And this year, like I said, we talked about the numbers this year. It was slightly down. The numbers were 33% less, but nonetheless, it was a really good show again this year.
Yeah, and just kind of put some perspective so people understand, kind of what Dave does, DFS does versus OPW. So I think about it this way. So at a gas station, so Dave, they make all the electronic. They make the pump and then all the electronic things at the store. Whereas OPW, we make all the mechanical stuff. None of our stuff attaches to a wire. So we make the nozzle, all the piping, the valves, fittings, and those types of things. So basically between DFS and OPW at a C-store or a gas station, we have everything, actually probably except the tank itself. Other than that, between the two of us, we got the whole gamut covered. So, PEI and NACS is a combination of, NACS is everything that's at a convenience store, and then the PEI is Petroleum Equipment Institute. So it's all the fueling equipment. Like Dave said, it's nice to be face to face again, see people in person. And as far as the attendance go, going in, we weren't sure what to expect. We actually had no idea what was going to happen. With this being the first big live event we had in almost 2 years. But I think we were actually pleasantly surprised with the turnout. We're obviously missing the international component. Normally we would have a lot of people from Europe and Asia, so we didn't see those people. But actually, what really impressed us or surprised us was the big turnout we saw from Latin America. So we had a lot of visitors from down south, travel up, as they're kind of releasing their restrictions as well. So it's great to see a lot of people from Latin America attending the show. But again, I think we were pleasantly surprised with the attendance that we did end up having.
Yeah, no, and having the privilege of being there, and also having been there for a few years, it definitely felt like attendance was down, but it felt like the energy at the show was like almost at an all-time high, and I think, Ed, you hit on it for a lot of reasons, like getting excited to see people again. Dave, you mentioned a lot of the same thing. I mean, is people who've been doing this for a long time in a leadership capacity, would you agree with that? That, the behavior and activity that you saw from people on the floor, it was a whole new level of engagement, or am I off there?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it was. I think what we saw this year was very interesting, albeit that we were down on attendance by about 33%. But the folks that did go to the show were decision makers. They owned the businesses. They weren't what I would call it. I don't want to call them tire kickers, but people. A lot of times, these larger companies will send a lot of their admin folks to these shows just to. And here's a gift for the year. Go enjoy the show. Go get all your trinkets and things like that. Those people didn't show up this year. This year was all about the ownership or the CFOs, the CTOs, all the C-suite level folks. And I think there was great engagement. And like I said, it was a lot of quality leads and discussions. And I think they were energetic to just get business going too. So from my perspective, that's what I saw at the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We echo that as well. The quality was there, not the quantity. Like Dave said, you think of a convenience store, and what these people would do, they'd invite their store clerks or store managers, and they were basically just there to walk the show and gather free samples and, see what the new beer Budweiser was, coming out with that year. So we definitely saw more of the decision makers and, the people that we want to have conversations with, to help our business and introduce our new products to. The great thing about the show is, our industry is a big relationship driven industry. We're really focused on relationships, and I don't care how hard you try or how good the technology gets, you can't build and maintain relationships over a digital or a virtual platform. So just the face-to-face engagement, cannot be replaced. And the people that we engaged with were the people that we wanted to see at the show this year. So that was exciting for us.
And I think that's a huge thing. And well, yeah, y'all did a great job. I don't know if it's, I would never accuse Ed of doing his homework before. I know he likes to wing these things, but I'm going to guess Dave just did a great job looking at the questions we have prepped, but really diving into that quality versus quantity idea. I think when you've got these large scale events with so many people running around with so many different profiles and responsibility sets, obviously it's great to talk to them and connect, but what do you guys attribute, the different, I guess, stakeholder set to? Do we think that that's, companies just needing to be more deliberate with travel and entertainment budgets, or safety concerns? What was the pulse there that created this effect where the people you wanted to talk to were there, and maybe those people that were great to connect with but might not make decisions, weren't there as, I guess, the volume that they had been in the past? Where do you think that came from?
Well, I think from my perspective, again, guys, it's a combination of what you just really hit on, Colton. I mean, I spoke to a lot of the decision makers there and kind of asked them, where were their admin folks and the people that normally would be there. He says, well, most of them are just starting to open up their shops, and doing things like that and allowing people to get out. I mean, a lot of the larger jobbers, the people are still working from home. So there was that safety aspect, but I think they're also, everybody's a little bit in crunch in terms of budgets and things like that too. And it's like, everybody's been pretty conservative over the past year or so about spending and travel and expenses and things like that. So many of them also told me, we're just keeping the budget down. We're going to hold off. And then the third piece was really people just like ourselves. We gave our employees an option to go or not to go if they felt comfortable from a safety perspective. So we had probably 20% of our sales team that didn't go just for the simple fact they were concerned about the safety. So I think a combination of those things from my perspective is what we saw and why we didn't see that larger attendance we normally would.
Yeah, and I think that the people that were there that did, make the trip to come to the show, I think their behavior was similar to ours. They were just happy to get out and, happy to see people face to face. When obviously you're selling a product, it's much easier to sell it or have that relationship face to face. I think the same is true if you're buying a product. You want to see the product in person. You want to talk to those people face to face. So I think really a lot of the excitement came just from people being able to get out and see people and have conversations and get out face to face. So the excitement level, I think, was both on the exhibitor side and on the attendee side as well. Just the ability to get out and see people again and socialize.
Ed, thanks for that insight, like how great the energy was, on the floor. Obviously you guys are coming from the sales and networking perspective. Let's dive a little deeper into maybe some of the non-sales and networking activity that happens on the floor at these shows, right? So maybe media coverage, content creation opportunities, social media coverage. What did that look like? Did it feel any different? Did maybe it even feel stronger because we're all programmed to being online all the time? Maybe that's where some of the people who weren't on the floor were engaging with the show. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. At least from the OPW standpoint, I felt the media coverage and social media coverage is more than I've seen it ever. And I think exactly what you just said, people are used to, being in a virtual environment. I think I did more interviews with the trade publications, both with PEI and NACS. They seem to have a big presence and focused. They did more filming and more video posts. And posting those interviews, we saw a lot of those that they showed, during the show. And then at least from our company standpoint, I think we probably filmed more like content videos than we ever had. We would have little product spotlights and then immediately get them out on our social, platforms. And I think from that standpoint, certainly more coverage we've had than we ever have in the past. And I think that's probably the direction that we're going. So felt a huge, networking, social media, digital coverage that way.
Yeah. And I would add, I echo Ed's comments. Ed's more on that side of the business because he's got the marketing piece underneath him as well. But even from my perspective, I saw just a lot of PEI and NACS coverage in our booth, filming, talking to all the folks in there. And, we exploited a lot of that ourselves, doing a lot more social media this year as well. So it was really, really good this year. And it was really surprising how well it was. Because, again, going into the show, we didn't know what to expect from attendance to whatever the media coverage was. And the media was very, very good.
Yeah. And I think, the need for more content when people can't be there probably drives a lot of that, and And I guess shout out because, as Dave said, marketing's under you. Shout out for leaning into that. And Dave, I guess shout out to your marketing team.
Yeah. And I was impressed. Even, we saw some of the international, trade publications that were there with Cruise and interviewing Petro Plaza and even Unity, which is kind of the NACS equivalent over in Europe. They had a contingency over there and they were doing filming and doing interviews. So it was good, as kind of that whole global perspective, which is what is good about that type of digital content, is you can share it all over the world.
Well, it's like a really interesting thing too, right? Like we talked about PEI-NACS being the Super Bowl for fueling equipment. You even like pull that analogy a little bit more. The Super Bowl isn't just the game. It's, all the media coverage that starts at, 9 a.m. to the post-game wrap-up at, 11 o'clock, right? So maybe that's starting to bleed over. That analogy could be apt, where like all that media coverage and all that happens at the show is a great way to kind of, I guess, multiply or amplify its impact. It's a really interesting thing.
So there you go. Next year you can set up Radio Row for PEI-NACS.
Yep.
Not a bad idea. Hopefully we got at least 2 guests, for Radio Row next year then. But so, we talked a lot about at the show, but maybe going back to networking, and we're definitely not asking for any incriminating stories here. But what was the energy like outside of it? I know like it's very common for companies to have like corporate parties, and it seemed like some of that dialed back a little bit this year. But what was it like with the whole fueling industry being in Chicago? Did that energy that you typically see outside of the show carry over?
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. It kind of goes along with this being a very relationship-driven industry. Yeah, I think most of the deals or all the work gets done after the show, and at the Chicago Chop House or over a glass of wine or a couple beers. So that part is always exciting, and I think the energy there from the show bled over into the after hours activities as well. Like so, where the magic happens, where the deals are really made. The big difference that we had this year is normally, both OPW and DFS as well. We would host large customer appreciation parties where we rent out big venues and invite our customers. So this year we did not do that, for a couple reasons. Number one, the big drive of trying to reduce SG&A this past year, and then just the thought we weren't sure how many people were going to show up, so we didn't want to invest the money in renting out a large venue, and what the occupancy restrictions may or may not be in the city of Chicago at the time of the show. So we backed away from our big show, but again, still the relationship and what happens outside the show, I think that still continued, and there were a lot of great dinners, a lot of great meetings outside of the show. The only thing, when you said like an industry will take over a city, the one thing this is my plug against Chicago, but Chicago is not the best city for that. I think the problem with Chicago is everything is so spread out, and you don't really get that feeling of all the trade show people kind of in one area or showing up the same places. So in my opinion, Chicago is not the best place to host this show. Hope doesn't offend anybody, but again, still the relationship building continued outside the show floor and spilled out into the Chicago steakhouses throughout the city for sure.
Yeah, I would add that Chicago is definitely a great place to be and great place to visit. Not necessarily the greatest spot for the show because logistics and restaurants where everything's at. But I again, echoing what Ed's saying, I think, we didn't have our customer events like we typically do, but that didn't deter our teams or our customers not to get together after the show, like I said, for dinners and drinks and do business. So from that perspective, I felt the energy was still there. We just weren't in one big ballroom together. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I guess maybe it's a really interesting segue, because we just hit on a point of I guess, difference with this PEI compared to our big shows before. What were some of those unique challenges, with kind of this being the first, ready for primetime big show that you did see, on the show floor, outside of it, doesn't matter. What were some of the things that you didn't expect to have to solve that you did?
Well, that's a pretty good question. I'll try to start out with that. I would say, really, our biggest quandary was, what do we take to show? You know, we already had pre-purchased the booth, so we knew we had a huge booth, but what do we take? Do we take all the products? Do we take our own very diverse portfolio, or do we just take a selected side of it? And we made the decision to go all the way with all of our products and a lot of our new software solutions, and it really paid off. It was good for us. It was just, we got a lot more traction on a lot of our new solutions than we ever expected. So that was unexpected for us, and we're very, very glad we did it. And again, we've had some really great results since the show in terms of a sales perspective. I'd say the only other unique challenge nobody had water at the show. I mean, it was almost impossible to find water. And when you walk around that show, you know, we're used to having water there, and customers are like, "Where's your water?" And we were looking for water. So other than that, everything went very, very well, pretty normal.
Okay. Now,
Yeah,
I think that's great.
I don't think we really saw any unique challenges. Kind of the same thing, you know, like Dave said, we went all out. I mean, again, we were unsure what the attendance was going to be, but you know, we had the big booth, and we were going to bring all of our stuff. You know, all of our new stuff. We didn't scale back anything from an exhibit standpoint in what we showed. And we did have water, Dave. I don't know what, you know, you guys should have come over to our booth. We had plenty of water. That's one thing we learned.
I didn't even know that.
We always have a refrigerator, and we're stocked filled with water. You know, even the mask mandate with the city of Chicago, that was kind of interesting. We were kind of at the beginning of the show deciding, you know, because technically everyone had to have a mask. And it was kind of interesting to see how that worked out. And I would say it's probably 50, maybe 60-40 people didn't end up wearing masks. So that didn't end up being a challenge. It's, you know, hard to talk to people through masks. So I think, you know, even the mask mandate wasn't really enforced on the show floor. I didn't see anybody get thrown out because they didn't have a mask on, because there were certainly a lot of people not wearing masks. I think that probably was the one thing we were concerned about, was having to wear masks on the show floor. But like I said, that's probably like most things. I mean, people that want to wear masks, they can, and people that are comfortable not wearing masks, they didn't. And I think it worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah, you had another element of physical fortitude. I mean, standing on the floor for 8 hours is enough, right? You know, so it's definitely an interesting thing. Though I think you both hit on a really, really good insight that I think is a great kind of segue into the next question. That insight is, go for it, right? Like you guys talked about sitting there and having to think, do we bring everything? Do we not? Well, it sounds like both of you made the decision with your teams, like, no, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And you did it, right? And I think that's something that the audience should definitely kind of internalize and take away. And I think how that leads into the next question, right, is how do you both feel about the prospects of these big shows? Like it feels pretty clear to me that you did have a great experience coming back to PEI. I mean, how do you see the next one, or your next big industry show? You think you're going to get more momentum? Are you guys bullish? I'd like to guess that you are, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. How do you feel about the future of big shows moving forward?
I'm not sure bullish. You know, obviously recently that we're talking about another strand of this coronavirus, which could potentially have something to do with what happens over the next few months. But I think it is a little bullish. I think people were very happy to get back into it. And as Ed stated earlier, this is a relationship business, and it's a touch and feel product business. So I think that it just proved to everybody that, yeah, we're ready to get back into it. Let's go. Let's move forward. You know, everybody's, you know, getting vaccines or not getting vaccines, but for the most part, you know, we've become a lot safer environments, and I think everybody's just ready to go. And so I think the only thing I'd say is different is learning from NACS is there may be less of the admin type people coming to these shows, and maybe it is more of the decision makers. I mean, because at the show, when I talked to a lot of decision folks, they even mentioned that, you know, we probably in the future won't be bringing as many as our just regular employees that tag along. So I think that might be really the only difference, but I certainly see this trajectory going the right direction going forward as far as keeping shows open.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about, it's great to be back. And, you know, you can't replace the interaction with the live show, you know, with any type of substitute. And I think that's kind of what we've learned. And, you know, as we go into the beginning of next year, that kind of enters our regional trade show where they're smaller shows, but we're not scaling back any of those. We're going to have, the typical footprint that we would have had in 2018, 2019, even at the regional shows as we move into the beginning of next year. But we have a big one in Las Vegas in February that we're planning for right now, and we're having the same footprint. We're not backing down. I think the live show is back as long as we keep the strains under control and people do what they're supposed to do, and we don't have another widespread variant or something. I think as long as people are staying relatively healthy, then trade shows are back.
Yeah, no, and I think that, again, for a lot of the reasons that you both have talked about, like why that's so important for technical products companies is the relationship component. And that can be tough to replicate, digitally, but, we do kind of have to ask, and maybe, talks of new strains being developed and all that, well, it seems like we're going in the right direction. A lot of things did happen virtually over the past year on the trade show side. Right. So we think about that, like digital shows, hybrid shows. Do we think that the presence of that over the last year has changed the way that people view the trade show? I mean, Ed, I know you ran a big virtual show right at the beginning, kind of the pandemic, when that was really the only option. How do you see that virtual or hybrid component fitting into the trade plans and industrial products moving forward?
Yeah, I think, what we did, I'm not afraid, we called it a virtual trade show, but it was more of, we just put all of our products, on display that people could come and look at virtually. I know PEI, attempted a virtual show last year. And my personal opinion, I think it was a monumental failure. And all the people I've talked to, I think most people will agree, whether they're customers, distributors, manufacturers, exhibitors, or attendees. I think that trade show environment, it's just, you try to replicate it, but it wasn't, it didn't work for us. And I don't think it worked for many of the other exhibitors as well. On the technology, it might be easier people that have technical products, but for guys like us that have, mechanical products, it's just, you can't replicate the hands-on looking and seeing the product and also talking to people face to face. So I don't know. I'm happy we're face to face, and I'm not a big fan of the virtual trade show, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll add as well. It was I would say, a significant failure. And I know PEI was trying to do the right thing, and it's the right thing to do during a pandemic, but it just was a significant failure. And so I don't think the virtual show is ever going to be successful. As Ed pointed out, it's a touch-feely type of environment we're in. But I do potentially see maybe kind of a digital hybrid more introducing at the show floors. Not necessarily, but again, not having a virtual show, but having the digitalized show. Now, I'd also tell you, I don't think it's going to be all digital either. And I don't think that's a good idea either, because I'll give you an example, and I won't mention the company's name, but there was a point of sale company that was at the show. They had none of their hardware there, and the sales team didn't even realize it. When the people set the show up, it was just monitors that talked about their product. Customers couldn't even see or feel a product. And the sales team was very frustrated just for the simple fact they said the customers are coming and they're going, they're not even stopping because we have nothing they can touch or feel or see other than the video monitor of what our product looked like. So I don't think total digital experience is going to be the way to go. I think it's going to be a combination as we go forward. So kind of my thoughts on that perspective.
Okay. No, I think it's a great thought, and I think it's kind of, encompasses both of what you were saying, is you can't substitute the real thing and that tactile in person, whether it be the product or the face-to-face conversation, but, dovetailing earlier, like talking about some of the social media coverage and all those things, like finding those clever ways to take what's already happening tactily on the show floor and throwing that up. Maybe there's something there. I'm not sure. Kind of going in that lens, and I know we got to wrap up here quick. We always like to ask a couple questions, to give the audience some real, actionable insights. And Dave, I'll pick on you first here because you kind of went the opposite direction with the story you just told. but what did you see on the floor that inspired you, or like, hey, you know what, we need to think about doing that next year? Does anything come to mind immediately? Or, you know, maybe the corollary story is a good one.
Really, you know, I think we really kind of outdid ourselves this year. We did a great job. We had a post-mortem meeting like we do every year, and from our president down, we were high-fiving everybody. We thought we hit the nail on the head. So I really don't know if there's anything out there, any trend that I personally saw that we would have done anything different, because I think we landed at 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, my takeaway, you know, again, being on the show floor, having people there, you know, can't be replaced. We did add, we debuted we call it a interactive forecourt product experience, where people could actually go on a big monitor and play around and see our products and how they integrate and work on. Because a lot of our stuff is buried underground. You don't get to see it. You know, Dave's stuff is all right above. They get to see all his stuff. But 80% of the stuff we sell gets buried underground and poured on concrete, so people don't get to see it. So we kind of introduced a tool where people kind of look in a 3D environment under the ground and see the products. So that was a big hit. So I think we'll do more of that. And then really what we came away with, what we're going to do next year or at future shows is, you know, we did a great job, you know, filming these video posts or these little product blogs, if you will, and then posting them. But I think what we're going to go for is more of a like live streams, you know, whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube. But I think what we're going to do is, you know, we'll send out a schedule ahead of the show so people can see what products they're interested in. And then we'll do, you know, live feeds right from the show floor, where the distributors or people that can't come to the show or still, I think there's still plenty of people out there that aren't comfortable with traveling. And we can, you know, bring the show floor to those guys in some type of live stream. So I think that's the one thing that we learned, and we're going to look to do more of in the future. You know, we plan on being face-to-face. You know, we're going to have our products, we're going to have our people on the floor. So people that want to come and travel and see us, we're there. And then for those of you that aren't going to be, you know, we're going to try and bring that, you know, through a live experience versus a pre-recorded video product display. So I think that's what we're going to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible idea, right? Again, it goes back to that, capture the magic in the physical and duplicate it digitally as easily as possible. Like, I think that there's some real wisdom there.
I'm looking forward to our marketing team hearing what Ed just said, because I tell you, that's some really good thought around that. I like that, Ed.
Well, I think, you know, the last question here, and I'll let you guys dive into it, but I think you might already answered it, is what is your big piece of advice for sales and marketing leaders who maybe their Super Bowl hasn't come back yet, right? Maybe they were in that, you know, phase where their show is a little earlier in the year, so they didn't get the chance to have it yet. If you're speaking to that individual who might be getting ready for their first big one back, what's the one nugget or the one thing that you'd really want to instill in them?
I'll take that first, Ed. I think from my perspective, what we learned was, again, you had mostly decision makers there. So I would say that your sales team needs to really drill down, find out which customers are going to come to that show, which one of their customers or potential customers, and be ready and prepared to talk about our solutions, how they resolve those customers' problem, and closing a deal on the floor. Because you don't get a chance to have those type of decision makers and at that high a percentage around you that much as I did at NACS, or any of us did. And you can close deals on the floor. As a matter of fact, we closed 2 significant deals on the last day of the show. We close deals throughout the show, and typically it's not what we call a sales show for us. It's you know, it's show and tell, and later on you follow up and you work the orders and work with the customers. We were selling product on the floor with our finance company on the floor. So that's why having those decision makers there was crucial. So again, it's about being prepared to know who's coming there and get ready to close deals on the floor.
Yeah, I think, you know, my big takeaway again is there's no replacing, you know, face-to-face live interaction. I don't care what digital platform, how good the technology gets. People were happy to be back face-to-face. But on the other side of that, don't be afraid to take some other types of technology on social media platforms and try and share that experience with people, you know, that don't want to come, whether it be live stream or you know, product videos. But again, you know, you can't I mean, trade shows were invented for a reason, and they're still successful. I don't care what if you're selling gas pumps or gas nozzles. I think it's still the best way to do business, at least in our industry, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
You're selling gas pumps or gas nozzles. Before we sign off here, I would like to tell the entire audience, if you do not see the OPW or DFS logo on the forecourt when you go to get gas, keep driving and go to the next one. You know, Ed and Dave, thank you so much, you know, to keep the Super Bowl analogy going. I think you definitely both spiked the football in a very big way there, you know, on that last question. And, you know, again, we're extremely grateful for your time and your insights, and can't wait to share it with our audience. So I guess thank you and goodbye. And
Thanks for having us, Colton.
Yeah, thanks,
Talk to you
Colton.
later.
Appreciate the invite. Stay safe.
All right.
See ya.